Welcome to the Scandinavian Mind podcast, our weekly show about how technology is changing the creative industries. Today on the program, how future thinking can help drive sustainability. We will speak to Charlotte Sundåker, CEO and co-founder of Planethon, a futures and transformation agency. In our conversation, we talk about why companies and organizations need to learn to think more about their future, the importance of storytelling to create future scenarios, and how future thinking can affect how we deal with our problems today. I'm Konrad Olsson, editor-in-chief and founder of Scandinavian Mind, and I'm here with my dear colleague Erik Sedin. Erik, Happy New Year!
Happy New Year! What a great time to be alive.
Back on the pod 2023. So I thought it would be a good topic to kick off the year is talking about future. There are a lot of people who are thinking about the year ahead right now. Have you made any New Year's resolutions?
Not really. I have one that I'm trying to fit into an old pair of jeans. That's it, basically. when spring comes.
Aren't we all? So, I mean, we have a lot of companies and organizations listening to this podcast. A lot of people who are taking in our content are working within the fashion industry or the beauty industry or the design industry. And I thought it'd be interesting to bring Charlotte on because they are helping companies, not necessarily that much in the fashion industry. They're working with finance and other big corporations, but they're really good at thinking about the future. And we're all about the future on this podcast, and they have a particular method which they call future literacy. So we're going to get into that in this episode. Planethon is a consultancy, kind of a management consultancy, specifically working with transformation, and we have kind of that word in common since we do the transformation conference each year.
Yes,
and I always love the fact that the Planethon, the name comes for a marathon for the planet. But before we get into it, I just want to plug a couple of things. We are, as we mentioned before, going to Copenhagen Fashion Week and setting up the talks program at CIF, the Copenhagen International Fashion Fairs.
Yes, sir. It's going to be really exciting. But do you know what we're doing exactly? Can we figure that out?
Well, we're finalizing the program as we speak. I think early next week, we're going to unveil the full program. But we can say that we have 3 themes. Obviously, Copenhagen Fashion Week runs from February 1st to February 3rd. Each day at CIF, we will have a different theme. Day 1 is going to be retail tech talks, talking about the need for innovation in the retail space, specifically the physical retail space. So we have some great speakers on board already, among them Fredrik Larsen, the co-founder of futureThe, kind of a sustainability agency. They wrote the sustainability policy for the whole of Copenhagen Fashion Week. We also have some speakers from within the industry, among them Rasmus Stark-Just. He's the head of sustainability at DK Company, one of the biggest fashion brands in the Nordics, or fashion corporations. Day 2 is going to be beauty innovation. We're going to talk a lot about beauty innovation this year at Scandinavian Mind. I'm proud to say we're going to have Susan Schlag, which is the CEO of L'Oreal Nordics. She's going to be there talking about the need for new technologies in beauty. And we're going to unveil our new report, The State of Beauty Innovation, which our dear colleague Johan is sweating himself with at this very moment to finalize.
Yeah, can't wait to read it. And for anyone thinking about or already planning about going to Copenhagen, come and say hi, swing by, listen to the talks, and learn some stuff.
All right, before we go on, I think we should just plug some of the things that are happening on ScandinavianMind.com. We've been keeping busy throughout the holidays here, publishing our predictions series. It's a series that you've been working on quite a lot, Erik, specifically on the mobility and gaming themes. Can you just walk through some of the insights you've learned or the predictions that we've heard from the industry? Let's start with mobility.
We have done, during the holidays, 4 stories in total about the predictions of 2023 for different industries. And I had the pleasure of writing about mobility and gaming. And mobility, we had Robert Falk, the CEO of Einride, which people of this podcast know about. Einride, the autonomous electrical truck company. We had Jonas Nyvang, CEO of Steelride, the startup that's doing electrical motorbikes. And then we had Mikael Lillelund, who's the head of brand at the Danish e-bike brand Mate, who talk about basically how to get rid of cars in our inner cities and in urban spaces, and how they think that should go about. I thought it was interesting. I read the other day that in Milan, for example, they just legislated that you can only drive 30 kilometers an hour in downtown Milan.
Oh wow.
And if this changes, this is like outside of the Nordics, right? But something like that sounds like it could be like a Copenhagen thing or whatever. How does that affect the kind of vehicles we drive in the city? More of this can be read in this story.
Good stuff. And we also had a great lineup from the gaming industry, which we published just the other day, actually.
Yeah.
5 personalities from the gaming industry talking about the year ahead. Give us some highlights.
First of all, I was happy to have a streamer on there, Michelle Mishrage Booman. She's a streamer. She streams daily, playing games. To hear her kind of perspective from the industry, not just from these executives sitting on big corporates, because we have some of them on there too. We have Thomas Meltzer. He's from Intel, big hardware company, right? We have some people talking about startups and talking about developers and new development studios, and that we have Marcus Toftedal. He works at Science Park Skövde, and Skövde being like this, I don't know, this like gaming capital of Sweden right now. They're going crazy out there. So he shares some insights on that. And then we also had Johanna Nylander, who is an analytic at the Swedish games industry. So she has a real, big bird's eye view of the whole, what games she's looking forward to, how 22 has looked. And she also goes into a lot of like AI generated content, which she's looking forward to, which would be cool to see. Listeners of this podcast, you guys, if you heard the other week before the holidays, we had Justin Hackney on. We talked about how AI can help creative industries. So she talks a little bit about how AI can help the gaming industry. And, a lot more. People should read on about that. And then also, of course, read my dear colleague Johan Magnusson's predictions, because he wrote about beauty and about fashion. That was before the New Year's.
Yeah. Well, a lot of good stuff there. And I do think AI is going to be on everyone's minds this year. It feels like it's going to be like the metaverse of 2023. If the metaverse was 2022, AI is going to be 2023. People are already crazy about what ChatGPT is doing for text generation. I've been playing around with it a lot in the holidays, writing Christmas rhymes for my family using it, and also I was actually using it for like brainstorming for my clients and stuff like that. So it's already useful. I'm sure we'll come back to that topic soon on this podcast.
Yeah. Today I read that Microsoft has invested $3 billion more into ChatGPT. People thought it was only going to be $1 billion at first, but now Fortune has reported it's been $3 billion. So they're putting their money into it.
I know they're shaking over at Google whether or not this is going to be able to. They issued some kind of red alert inside Google because they're super worried about if this is going to take over. Anyways, a lot going on this year. There's a lot going on at Scandinavian Mind as well. Again, please visit us at Copenhagen Fashion Week. Later this spring, we'll also be publishing the 4th print issue of Scandinavian Mind, and we're already working on the next edition of Transformation Conference. But we'll get back to all of that during the season. Super pumped for a new year. So let's get into it. Here now, our conversation with Charlotte Sundåker, CEO and co-founder of Planethon. Enjoy. All right, so now I'm here with Charlotte Sundåker, CEO and co-founder of Planethon, a futures and transformation agency here in Stockholm. Welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you so much, Konrad. Lovely to be here.
Wonderful. Did I get that right? We talked about just before we were on air what you are, Planethon. I believe which is short for a marathon for the planet. I always liked that. I thought it was a beautiful sentiment. But maybe we should just start by describing Planethon and what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the description of marathon for the planet better than trying to define exactly what are we, because that's a constant dialogue and so difficult to do. But I guess a transformation partner would be the most accurate description of Planethon today. We work with supporting companies, organizations, and teams in activating and accelerating action towards preferable futures. So that means a lot of innovation creativity, collaboration, and imagination, actually.
Good stuff. We're going to get into a lot of these terms in this podcast. And the reason I wanted to have you on is, one thing we have in common is the word transformation. As many people know that listen to this podcast, we are hosting the Transformation Conference each year for the fashion industry. A lot of people that consume our content and listen to this podcast are working in the industries. They're working within industries such as fashion, design, beauty, that are in the midst of a transformation. And you recently launched this white paper called The Death of Coffee.
Yes.
You're going to have to explain that. But there's a term in there that I wanted to begin this conversation with, and that is futures literacy and the need for futures literacy. Could you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, I would love to, and I'm so glad that you're bringing up coffee. It's my favorite topic, so let's dig into that later. So, futures literacy is a term that I came across just a couple of years ago, and that was more deeply introduced to me by my colleague, Dr. Andrew Mary, who is a scientist and specialized in creating futures. So. Futures literacy is actually a term used by UNESCO, so United Nations Organization for Education, Science, and Culture. And what they mean is that futures literacy is a critical skill that can be and should be learned by everyone. So everyone in a society should have and be futures literate. And what does that mean then? Well, it means that you can and you do practice imagining and working with future and working towards a clear idea of different futures, and that you practice that skill on a regular basis. So it's not about setting out one future and then opening your Excel and start planning your way there, but rather training this as a muscle to work with many different polytopian versions of the future, which will make you more ready and prepared for the different futures that might come. And it will also make you better to adapt the changes that we have ahead of us, and being able to cope with the volatile things that will happen in your surrounding world, that in this part of the world will come closer and closer to us for the next coming 20 to 50 years. So
what's polytopian? That word stuck out.
Yeah, I mean, usually when I talk about that we work with creating future scenarios and building futures literacy capacity, people are like, but do you create utopian or dystopian futures? Because you want to know, like,
All right.
are you do I believe in a positive future or a negative one? So that question in itself is a big problem, and mean that, okay, we are not really practicing futures literacy, as polytopian futures are not one or the other. It's practicing many different scenarios, and that is what we need to be much better at doing. So that's polytopian is just, it's not utopian, it's not dystopian, it's many.
And can I get really practical as a follow-up? So what are, when companies come to you with some of these challenges, what is typically something they need to put in place in order to, you call this a muscle, meaning something that needs to be kind of ever present, I would imagine, always thinking about future, always thinking about different scenarios in order to, better act as an organization. What is kind of lacking? What is the first part of this muscle, if you will, within an organization that you see?
I mean, I think I work obviously in the context of sustainability and sustainable transformation. And in that context, we see most organizations, we have deep experts within the sustainability department. So here we have a lot of knowledge about the problem this company has when it comes to sustainability, but they also sit with a lot of expertise and potentially a lot of scientific insights about the possible solutions. But these insights and this expertise sits with a few people. And it's not spread out as a common knowledge within the organization, which means that it's not used in innovation efforts, in partnership efforts, in transformation efforts in a daily practice. So it's about bringing out the collective in working with creating the desirable futures that this company, for example, wants to see. So a specific example of that we worked with, for example, with MasterCard. So MasterCard is most people know about MasterCard, and MasterCard is the partner of many organizations globally, and they have a global network of both enablers and merchants, and we all are part of that network in one way or another. So when they want to figure out how to use their unique role as having this large network, they work with Futures Literacy to bring on board not only their global team of colleagues, but also with their global team of partners and investors and global management to look at, okay, what are possible future trajectories for MasterCard solutions? It can be the tech solutions, the products, services, and the potential of different partnerships within their network. So they use this way of creating future scenarios and then reflecting and acting on the opportunities that arise with those insights of what could this future be, and this and so on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the things that I thought was fascinating with your report, and you go into sort of the difference between you have this future cone and illustration, and anyone who reads the white paper can see this, but it ranges from kind of the projected and probable future up to the plausible, the possible, and the preposterous. And you talk about sort of the unknowable future, and this is, I'd love to dive into the topic of just understanding the future a little bit, because most people are right here, right now, and they look at the problem that they have, in right now in their daily life, in their daily situation. And you alluded to that in just a minute ago, that describing the problem is perhaps it's an important part, but it's only the first part in kind of trying to project the future. So how do you, and there are other terms that are thrown around when talking about this, sort of the unknown, for instance, is something that people talk about when describing the future and having an understanding of that. So when you teach people to think about the future, can you explain a little bit how you go about doing that, specifically to someone who's not well versed within thinking about the future? Where do you start? How do you kind of open their minds?
I mean, I think visualizations are a really good, hands-on way of doing that, because imagination is a key component to futures literacy. So we tend to think, definitely in the business world, we tend to think about imagination as fantasy. It doesn't belong in the world of business and in the world of rationality, but it's actually a cognitive ability and skill that can be used for creating futures. So starting in using imagination together with scientific insights is sort of our the two key components when building future scenarios is to use the scientific insights and then the people's imagination of those different versions of the future that the cone, for example, holds. So I can give a one example for those who are not in futuring at all. Do you remember the app, Face app?
No, not really. I have a vague recollection of what it could be, but it was something everyone used for a while and then it just faded away.
Exactly. It was like a gimmick. You downloaded an app and then you took a picture of yourself, a selfie, and you could then see versions of yourself as your older versions of yourself, right?
Mine was so horrible I didn't even want to share it. I was like, is this me?
Exactly. So like more leaning towards a preposterous future there, right? So what Face app was actually about, which not very much people know about, is it was part of a scientific study. So a researcher decided to explore the connection of a person's idea of and possibility to see an older version of yourself with related to pension savings. So by creating this app, they could study whether or not seeing this older version of yourself would mean that people would actually save more to their pensions.
All right, I didn't know that.
No, so we all thought it was a fun thing, but what the result of that study was that, yes, people who used the app did start to save more for their pension. So it's very natural to have a stronger relationship with your current self than with your future self, right? Because you know your current self very well, but you don't know anything about your future self. But by getting just an image of your future self, we got a stronger relationship to our future selves. So if that can be done with just an image of ourselves, what would happen if we create those images and get to look, feel, smell, listen, and experience versions of not only ourselves, but our family, our communities, our societies, our future businesses, and the future world? How could we get a stronger connection to future generations and our planet through futuring? So that's a very silly example, but
it's a clear example of visualization and how obviously visualization can change how you act today. So how do you propose companies and organizations do this? How do you visualize your future, and on what basis should you do this? Is it on a monthly basis, yearly basis? Is there like an audit you should do? We're doing this podcast in the beginning of January, so a lot of people are thinking about the year ahead right now. So when you advise companies, is there a process you follow, or talk about how it's done?
Yeah, it's definitely a process. We call it, and it's an adaptation of a scientific study we called Cli-Fi prototyping. So it's about using the scientific insights within an area that is relevant for the company or the team specifically. And then we create possible future scenarios from those scientific insights, and then we start exploring what those futures would mean. And together with the imagination of the teams, you can create really rich and detailed possible futures, and also create desirable futures. And these obviously can be the foundation of a company's mission or vision, and bringing engagement in all your teams internally, but also investors on board, and in brand and communication. And so it's a great starting point for setting your strategic agenda, but also getting commitment to kickstart your transformation journey or speed up your transformation journey.
I'm sure the companies that you work with obviously are open to this process and open to thinking, at least they want to if they work with you guys. Do you have a sense of, generally, and you can pick any industry or just give any example of, how good or bad are organizations or companies at thinking this way? Do you have a sense of that? Is there data on that? I'm sure maybe it's a more abstract thing, but I'm curious to see if you have any insight into how future literate are we in the business community.
I don't have any data on that, but my sense is that there's a lot of interest, curiosity, engagement, and dedication to not only transform your business, but being a positive contribution to the world. So that is something that I see is a genuine desire within companies. We work mainly with large companies, and there I see that there's a really big desire to do change, and then going from that ambition and desire and put that into action, that's the big tricky part, right? And that's what you work with every day, just as I do and so many others. So supporting that transformation to actually happen. And so that's what I see is in these companies, many of them have actually already started to commit to, for example, Science-Based Targets Initiative. They set up science-based targets, so they have their goals and they have set that ambition agenda. But then going from that to not only take incremental steps and thinking that it's business as usual, but we just need to add on the sustainability layer and instead, figure out how do we actually need to transform the organization to be able to reach these targets. And we are right there, because what I've sensed for the past 3 years is that companies have increased their ambition and agenda, but are still trying to do things within the operations they have today. So this is where we're going to have to see a shift, a drastic shift for the next couple of years. And the companies who will not do that will die. It's very similar to the digital revolution and transformation journey that so many companies had to go through, and so many died on their way, not trying in transforming. I worked almost 10 years at Hyper Island, so we worked very closely with that digital transformation, and it's very similar in this. If you consider this a issue that we can just put into our routines and processes and practices as they are today, you are not going to succeed. But if you put these issues, sustainability issues, in the core of your business model and think about and create transformation journeys on how to adapt and change your organization to work with those business models, then you're going to have a chance. And that's going to happen a lot through partnerships, obviously. So that's a big difference in this transformation versus the digital one, that it's going to need large-scale partnerships and also working a lot more with the collective intelligence and action with the teams.
Got it. Well, change is hard, obviously, and as you said, you need to make this part of your whole organization and your whole life. You mentioned something earlier that I want to sort of go back to, and it alludes to storytelling. You call it cli-fi, which is climate fiction. Why is storytelling so important in these processes?
So part of actually empowering many to do change, is for many to actually understand what is the change that needs to happen. And here we have a lot of complexity. So it's very difficult to learn about the complex systemic issues that we are facing. So what I hear a lot is like, oh, let's make it easy for consumers to do right. And that's a great ambition. But we're not only consumers, we are also producers and change makers in the companies we work. So the companies need to figure out what is our unique role in a large scale transformation, and what is my contribution into that. And to be able to know that, you need to have some understanding of these issues. So in short, what is climate fiction today is climate fact tomorrow. And in climate fiction, you get to learn about the challenges that will be your tomorrow, that will be your reality then. And I can take the example of coffee, as you brought that up before.
I was going to ask about that. Why coffee?
It's a story. It's a storytelling example that I like because it's simple and it's very deeply rooted into my everyday life. Coffee, as we know, many of us love coffee, and me and millions of others in Sweden and around the world. And coffee is also a crop that grow on the other side of the planet. So usually it's we grow like 2 different types of coffee crops. So it's often large monocultural plantations, which means that it's just one or a couple of different crops that grow there. So these crops get super vulnerable for pests and other disturbances in the ecosystem, and they grow in areas which is very attacked by and affected by the climate change. So a lot more than we see here today, we see where our coffee crops grow. So when we try to fight these pests with pesticides, we continue to damage the local ecosystems. And as the temperature of the planet gets hotter, then we will in the end not be able to grow coffee. In the soil will not be able to grow this coffee. So something that is part of our culture here and that we don't see the effect of today, we will have, and we will see the effect of in 30 to 50 years from now, when we will not be able to grow coffee anymore. And here, with that insight, you get sort of like a systemic learning. So just by telling a story about coffee, you understand, for someone who is not into complex systemic sustainability issues, you still can understand that, okay, something is growing there. I'm dependent of it, my body, but also in my culture, and it's going to affect me. So what can we do? So we can, for example, say that, but then we need to find new places to grow. We're not going to be able to grow in Brazil. We have to move the crops to somewhere else. So that's one way of solving it. Another way of solving it is to say that, let's try to innovate new drinks. What will we replace coffee with instead? So that's another way of thinking about innovation and product innovation in relation to that story. And a third that I would prefer, obviously, is to how do we change our lifestyle here to be able to continue drinking coffee in the future? So that's a different type of question.
Well, the notion that we can't grow coffee anymore scared the bejesus out of me. So
me too.
Let's get on that one. So a lot of listeners to this podcast are in the fashion industry, beauty industry, design industry, sort of what we call broadly sort of the lifestyle industries. I mean, you work across many different industries, from finance and food and so forth. You know, what would be your start? Is there any insight you can share, or starting point you would advise someone from the fashion industry when entering into this notion of futurist literacy and thinking more, you know, specifically about transformation? Curious, any insights at all?
I think maybe since you also work a lot within design, I think it's a lot about designing for the future. So leave the present and start building the future that you want to see, and then backcast from there. So I think that's my best my best recommendation, because if you start with, oh, where are we at now, you're going to get very quickly stuck in where you all the hinders and challenges of today. So I think it's all about that, creating the desirable futures that you'd like to see, and then quite quickly start looking at, okay, so what is our unique role and capacity and capability of solving towards these futures, and where do we need partners? So where do we need partners, and where do we need innovation, and where do we need tech? Because I know you're also into tech a lot, and I mean, we know that tech is definitely an enabler for this transformation, even though we should also consider, again, with the systemic lens, that, okay, when we are developing tech solutions, have we thought through what that solution will actually affect in a different part of the value chain or in the system? So it's very important to take that systemic approach when deciding to go for a tech solution.
Got it. I mean, you started Planethon, is it 5 years ago now? On, you call it the mission of making scientific insights more accessible. I'm curious, from your own personal perspective, when looking at new technologies or new scientific breakthroughs, is there anything that excites you extra much right now? Anything you're looking at, any developments that are super exciting to you personally, any new technologies?
Me personally, I'm very intrigued by AI and the possibilities of AI. We work with generative AI in creating future scenarios, but I'm also very much into other applications of AI. And I have kids at home, so just using like Brickit, an app that can help you sort in your big pile of messy Lego. I think all parents can relate to, like, yeah, how do we find creativity in this big pile of just small bricks?
Right.
But using an AI camera that can support you in, okay, these are the pinpoints, and these are the potential things you can build with this pile of bricks, and then just helping you find it. So, I mean, with all this, you can find this little piece and this little piece, and then give detailed instructions on how to build it. It creates a completely different experience. And I mean, this could also easily be used for in the context of a beauty industry, and for using that type of AI camera for skin complexity of beauty, or color analysis, or finding and matching the right products with your need, for example. So I don't know how much that is developed, but that is definitely an application in beauty. But I mean, obviously, for me, as more of a save the world nerd, I would use it more for like waste analytics, which is,
Right.
I mean, there we have great solutions coming up with identifying waste and sorting and finding and using AI for those purposes. So it's just also really inspiring, I think, to see the application of AI in one area and see, okay, so if we take that application of the Lego bricks, for example, how can we apply that technique to the challenges we have in our organization, for example.
Super exciting. Now, there are actually things happening on the AI front. There are a few companies working with AI-driven tools to exactly what you said, sort of analyze skin conditions and so forth. I'm also very interested in that waste analytics. And obviously, I've been tooling around with this ChatGPT all Christmas now.
Me too.
Since, I'm a writer, so I'm rapidly seeing my own profession going down the drain, or as I'd like to see it, a new kind of tool for the future.
Yeah, it will let you focus even more on imagination and creativity and driving change and continue to inspire others, while GPT can do a lot of the boring stuff for you.
Exactly. I also wrote some Christmas rhymes with using ChatGPT. It was very entertaining for the whole family. We're going to wrap up soon. I just wanted to end, speaking of storytelling, you have a collaboration of sorts with Spotify. Mm-hmm. And as part of this white paper, there's also some content you can consume there. Can you explain what that is and how people can find it?
Yeah, sure. So together with Spotify, we at Planethon created a number of scientific scenarios, future scenarios, and then we let 3 different writers write inspiring stories from those scenarios, and then 3 different actors telling those stories. So we have 3 episodes on the future. So it's actually science-backed futures. So it's fun and intriguing stories, but it's also to learn about that. I mean, sort of the coffee example, learnings about how could a future look like. So it's called 2072, and it's a Spotify original, and it's on Spotify. And the white paper that you have referred to, it's called The Death of Coffee, ? And it's about our approach of science-backed and imagination-led futuring for transformative businesses. So it's possible to download it from our website, planethon.io. And if you want to discuss it, you're more than welcome to contact me. Just email me on charlotte@planethon.io, and I'll dive into all discussions you would like to have.
Good stuff. Charlotte Sundåker is the CEO and co-founder of Planethon, a futures and transformation partner here in Stockholm, Sweden. Charlotte, thank you so much for speaking to me.
Thank you for speaking to me.
All right, that was our conversation with Charlotte Sundåker, CEO and co-founder of Planethon. Don't forget to sign up to our newsletter. Visit scandinavianmind.com/newsletter not to miss out on any content or any activities coming out of Scandinavian Mind. Again, there's a lot happening this year at Scandinavian Mind. Don't miss us at Copenhagen Fashion Week on February 1st to the 3rd. Until next week, goodbye.
Goodbye, see ya.